everybody. Time to talk football. Buffalo Bills football, as you see all the red and blue around us. Mr. Manchild, Jim Lurch, along with Paul Boygreen Esden Jr. We are presented by Northeast Roofing Professionals. And today's video brought to you by our friends at Cam's Pizzeria, where it is always love at first slice. We'll hear more from our sponsors in just a little bit. But let's bring on our Bills insider, talking from Cover One, our friend, Mr. Anthony Prohaska. What's up, Anthony? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Getting ready for the draft. We are 2 weeks away now from the draft. My colleague here will be there physically. He'll get to hear that one pick in the first 2 rounds that the Bills will chime in on. We're talking about a multitude of picks, trades, and Anthony, you and the Bills, you got your one little pick here to you decipher over the first, day and a half, day and a half, right? Before we finally,
right.
Give me your thoughts about whether Bills Nation is excited about the draft with it not being a draft of a multitude of picks.
Oh, I always think there's excitement around the draft. I think just the idea of, for every team, whether you are rebuilding or you're a championship contender or Super Bowl winner, the idea of just, moving towards the future and bringing in new players, there's always some semblance of excitement across the board. And I think that exists for the Bills. But also even more so, I think Bills fans are very, not necessarily completely in tune with how it works, but they're very in tune with the salary cap and financials and free agency and why things have been the way they are the past couple of years. So they understand the importance of the draft and getting cost-effective young talent on the Bills. And then attached to that is the firing of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane still being there, and fans kind of not really believing in Brandon Beane's track record of drafting, and then how much was McDermott, how much was Beane, so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of energy around it. Just they have some positions of need that need to be addressed, and there are a multitude of spots on this roster defensively where they need depth, they need starters, they need youth, they need something now, they need something for the future. And like you said, they don't have a lot of picks, so there is so many storylines going into it. Like, do they trade back at pick 26? Do they try to recoup some draft capital? Do they stay there? Who do they take? Is someone going to fall? Is it a receiver? Are you reaching? Do we really have faith in Brandon Beane? So on and so forth. So, yeah, I do think there is a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement for the Bills, even though they don't have a ton of draft capital and they pick late in the first round.
Well, Anthony, one of the reasons they don't have a ton of draft capital is because they made the move for DJ Moore, which was giving up that second-round draft choice. So now, as Lurch mentioned, as I'm waiting for Bill's pick, I'm going to have to wait for a while to the end of first round and then wait for a while longer after that. So there's a large gap between, first off, from pick 1 to 26, obviously, and then backing that to your next pick after that.
Just 91, by the way. Go ahead.
Thank you. With that sort of gap, that puts an even stronger, intense spotlight, especially if the Bills end up just sticking and picking as opposed to trading back here. With DJ Moore, is wide receiver completely off the table with these early round selections? Because they obviously have Khalil Shakir, they have DJ Moore, they have other intriguing, pass catchers on this team. But does it rule it out completely now that you've sort of put your resources, some of them, in the DJ Moore basket?
For me, I initially kind of hoped it did. I'll say I think the receiver spot for 2026, I was always about to forget what year we're in. I think the receiver spot for this year is largely fine, right? If you're looking at it, it's not the best wide receiver room, but I think it's a useful wide receiver room. DJ Moore kind of knocks everybody down a peg in the depth chart. Then you've still got Dalton Kincaid as a pass catcher, though he is, somewhat unreliable with his availability because of injuries and so on and so forth. I do think there are bigger fish to fry on this team. I think there are bigger needs on the defense in the short term and the long term, but I don't think wide receiver is off the board at either 26 or 91. Especially if we're looking at the wide receiver room and kind of diving into it. As we've talked about a bunch on the show, at this time next year, Keon Coleman might not be on the team. He could be a top 2 receiver on the team and he turns things around, or he could still be bottom of the depth chart. He could be somebody they trade. He could be somebody they cut. You're looking at Josh Palmer, who has a pretty good out next offseason with his contract. If you designate him as a post-June 1st cut, it's only a dead cap hit of 1.6 next year, 3.2 in 2028, but it saves you $8 million next offseason. So if Palmer gets hurt again, or Palmer doesn't, kind of prove his worth with the contract, we could be sitting here next year at this time minus Keon Coleman, minus Josh Palmer. And then it's like, okay, it's DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, and Tyrell Shavers, coming off the ACL or the full season back after the ACL. You would need to add a receiver next year. So I think there's something to be said for being at pick 26 or 91. And if the best player available is a wide receiver, take it. It's still kind of a need now, and it could be an even bigger need going forward. And again, if you got the best player available and he's on your board at that spot, if Casey Concepcion is your guy, take Casey Concepcion at pick 26. I do think defense, again, bigger and more important fish to fry, but I don't think receivers off the board.
I mean, I was going to throw out, Anthony, like, what is in your mind the Bills? I mean, if I had to pin you down, what's the Bills' number one need this offseason?
Oh, I'm going to say interior defensive line right now, and I'm going to broad brush it with that because they're going to be a multiple front defense. They're going to be in that odd front as their base defense with Jim Leonard, and then in the nickel and sub packages, there'll be a 4-down even front. But I think there's questions up front, right? Like you've got Deion Walker. Is Deion Walker going to be your regular nose in the base front stuff? Like you probably need more of a true nose in that aspect. You also just need more run defense based at the defensive tackle spot in the spine in general, whether it's odd front or even front stuff. We've seen that be an issue for this Bills defense the past couple of years. And I know with Jim Leonard, he can lean into more a movement-based defense where run stunts and run blitzes and gap exchanges and twists and games and all these things. But at a certain point, you still need to be able to kind of get some ass kickers up front, mitigate displacement, and not get moved. So you've got Deion Walker, and then you've got Ed Oliver, who is a good player but gets hurt. Then you've got TJ Sanders at maybe a 4-eye in your odd front stuff. He didn't really have the best season last year, also had to move around a bunch. Is Landon Jackson going to be a guy who's going to line up inside a tackle in the odd front stuff? What does he do in the even front stuff? I just think there's questions all along the defensive line that, those 3 interior spots in an odd front, and then even some of the interior spots in the even front as well. So for me, it's interior defensive line, somebody who can play on the inside shoulder of a tackle or right on him, and then maybe kick inside as a 1 or a 3 tech in even front stuff. And I think just right behind that, edge is still a need for them. Linebacker is a need for them. You need an inside linebacker to start next to Terrell Bernard, or maybe even replace Terrell Bernard if he can't stay healthy and or doesn't get back to the form he had 2 years ago. But you like some more hybridization out of the linebacker spot, but those hybrid guys aren't really going to be available there. So do you take a linebacker? Do you not? And then as I mentioned, edge, you've got Groot, Greg Rousseau, you've got Nick, you've got Chubb. I almost said Nick Chubb, but you got Bradley Chubb. You got Michael Hoyt, but he's coming off of an Achilles. Is Michael Hoyt going to be fine and good to go? Even if he is, you still need a guy behind him at a heavily rotated spot. But I think that's a lot to expect of Hoyt and ask of him to come back and be good off that Achilles injury now. So for me, it starts with the defensive line and it goes up the spine to linebacker, a little bit to edge. That's kind of where I'm at.
Anthony, can you do me a favor? We're good friends.
What?
I just
trouble, Anthony. I'm
wow.
trouble.
No, all I'm saying is if the Bills are going to take a receiver, to go back to that conversation, I just have one suggestion. If you could sort of run it up the flagpole over there, can you strike a trade with the Kansas City Chiefs first before making your wide receiver trade? And you can move back a little, and then you can take whatever receiver is left over after the Chiefs pick theirs. Can you do that for me?
I don't get it. Is that supposed to be like a great dig at the
Bills like now? a little Xavier Worthy, little Keon Coleman action there. Just sort of weave that in.
I mean, because Xavier Worthy has worked out so good, and Xavier Legette has worked out so good for the Panthers.
Superstar.
Yeah. How's the dumpster fire of a Jets team that you got going on?
Whoa!
Over there? Is that good?
Hey,
you know what?
Are you guys started?
Are you guys
Going
even
back in the middle again? Go back in the middle.
Are you guys even going to draft anyone, or are you just going to straight fire Aaron Glenn now and not draft anyone, or do you want to draft some guys for the next future, coach, and then hope you get a quarterback next year? Do you want to take Ty Simpson and ruin his life by bringing him to the Jets? What would you like to do?
Anthony, I know that, we don't swim in the same water, so you don't understand this, but because you guys fired your coach, your offseason programs have already begun. Us stable teams that keep our head coaches in continuity, we don't start our offseason
Didn't you
programs
fire
for a
every
little-
single,
for a
it
little
didn't,
bit
is it
longer,
didn't
a little
every
bit
single
longer,
coach,
okay?
every single coach aside
Not the
from
head
Aaron
coach.
Glenn got fired?
Not the head coach.
But more coaches got fired in New York than Buffalo.
You not the head coach, pal. Okay. And by the way, Mr. Picking Stones over there, Sean McDermott, how many coordinators has he thrown in front of the bus during his time there before eventually he was thrown himself in front of said bus? So come on, man. Throw rocks from your glass house over there, buddy boy.
I don't think it's a glass house like the Jets. Good job screwing yourselves out of the Fernando Mendoza sweepstakes, though, by the way, too. Well,
we don't need him.
Sure, yeah,
I heard Dan Orlovsky. Ty Simpson's a better quarterback anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, there you go. And plus, you guys got Geno. That worked out so great the first time. I'm sure it'll work
100%.
out even better now.
Good
thing he's got all those weapons to throw to.
Garrett Wilson.
The season will settle all of this, and the season will settle all of this. Let me ask you this general question, though, Anthony, that I think it kind of ties into this mock conversation you two are having here, and that is, I all cards on the table. I was against the Sean McDermott firing, particularly because the Bills decided to keep Brandon Beane. So that's been my position. My position hasn't changed. I believe that McDermott was an outstanding coach. I know he didn't get the Bills to the promised land, but only one team gets to the promised land every year. I think teams forget about that kind of stuff all the time. I think he was the mark of continuity and consistency. I think given the parameters, the budget, everything that he's had to work with in Buffalo, that he did a tremendous job. So I didn't like the firing. Okay, but, life goes on. You move on. Now they decide to keep their GM and hire from within. Like, that's the big change. The big change is, we're going to just promote the guy underneath him and make him the head coach. Like, how does that change anything? So just let me ask you this general question, because when I look at it from afar, and I'm not a Bills fan, but I do like the Bills, but I'm not a Bills fan. I'm a Giants fan. Everybody knows that. All right. But, but I still like the Bills, and I didn't like what happened. And I'm just, there's nothing that's exciting me about this new look Bills at all. Like, I don't know. I'm a little dismayed with the Bills. I'm a little like, I don't know. What's this going to be? Is Brady even going to be any good? And
yes.
Give me your sense, because you are a Bills guy. You live inside the parameters of Bills Nation. Is there some of that, kind of, I'll call it mediocrity or lukewarmness among the fan base? Or has the fan base
mediocrity?
Joe Brady is our guy. We're psyched with Joe Brady. This is going to be a different thing here, and I can't wait to get to it. Like, what is the prevailing win with Buffalo Bills fans? Because I really don't know. I can only tell you what my personal prevailing win is, and it's kind of like, meh.
I do think it is. I think it's wait and see mixed with meh. Like, even speaking for myself and then getting to the kind of the larger picture, if not for the Bills hiring Jim Leonhard, that's the only thing that has me excited about this offseason. And that's just because I've loved Jim Leonhard for years, going back to Wisconsin. Like, I've started studying him in 2018, 2019. I started tweeting about wanting him to be the Bills defensive coordinator in 2022 or 2023. If not for that, I would be largely out on this Bills offseason. They didn't make a lot of moves in free agency, understandably so. They don't have a ton of financial capital. But yeah, kind of tying into your initial point there, Jim, it's like, again, I thought Sean McDermott was part of the problem. I didn't think he was the problem, which is essentially what all these actions and moves kind of indicated. If you have a core group and you only essentially remove one person from the core group, that the thought comes across as, well, the rest of the group is fine. It was this one guy that was the problem. And I don't think that was the case. I think Beane was a significant part of the problem, or has been. You mentioned not being able to get to the promised land. I think Beane is a significant part of why they haven't been able to get to the promised land, just like McDermott was. And then you get rid of McDermott, and then, like you said, I think there was a lot of fan buzz for a new head coach. A lot of fans wanted Kubiak, right? The hot name. They understand the tree comes from offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champions. And then it's not that. It's just like, oh, it's Joe Brady. And a lot of fans had issues with Brady during the season. I think it's very much a wait and see. I think fans are trying to be optimistic, but I think there's a good chunk of people that don't have a lot of faith in the organization right now, don't have a lot of faith in the direction they're going necessarily. And like we talked about before, if they start out and it's ugly, like even if it's just 0-1, but if they start out like 1-3, 1-4, something that's like not the end of the world, everybody's grabbing their torches and pitchforks for Bean and for Brady. Like, there is going to be no, all right, let's let the season play out. Let's see what happens. If they don't start out strong and start out positive, I think a lot of fans are just teetering on the edge and waiting they don't need a giant bombshell, right, to drop. They just need like a little piece of hay to tip the scale, and everything's going to explode.
Talking all things Buffalo Bills with Anthony Prohaska from Cover One, our Bills insider. We are presented by Northeast Roofing Professionals, and today's video brought to you by our friends at Cam's Pizzeria. If you haven't already, pop that like button, and you see our YouTube link right there. If you're not already a subscriber, subscribe. YouTube.com/@MC Show Digital. All right, a word from our sponsors, then we're back with more with Anthony. Stick around.
When you think of Cam's Pizzeria, think about two of your favorites, their zesty buffalo chicken wing pizza or their tasty chicken bacon ranch. Over 16 specialty pizzas made fresh daily with the best ingredients. Indulge in their homemade calzones, subs, wraps, salads, and their famous cannolis for dessert. They're all made with love just for you. Order online for 10% off at camspizza.com. Locations in Camillus and Oswego. Cam's Pizzeria. It's love at first slice.
Finding the right local roofing company can be tricky. You don't want to hire the wrong roofers, or you could end up spending a fortune on repairs. The pros at Northeast Roofing Professionals can ensure your home is protected by a strong and sturdy roof. Locally owned and operated, over 30 years experience, free estimates, and competitively priced. Don't settle for an inexperienced roofing contractor. Turn to Northeast Roofing Professionals. Discounts for military and first responders. Reach out and let them put a sturdy roof over your head. NERPCNY.com. NERPCNY.com.
All right, we are back. Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital at MC Show Digital. Boy Green, fire away, my friend.
Yes. Well, Anthony, I saw you at the meeting last week, so I wasn't going to say anything. It looked like it was your first time there, but I think we can both sort of come together here. Last week, Stephon Gilmore retired from the National Football League, and he started his career with the Buffalo Bills, this wonderful player for the Bills. And I'm curious because we can share in our therapeutic experiences here, slightly different because Darrelle Revis is the greatest cover corner of all time, but, somewhat in the general vicinity that we could put together here is that you guys had Stephon Gilmore, Gilly, and I'm curious how Bills fans feel because he wins a Super Bowl ring with the New England Patriots, this hated rival. Darrelle Revis with the Jets starts his career with the Jets, has all these wonderful times and experiences, leaves, comes back, and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame now. He wins a Super Bowl with the Patriots and then came back. And a lot of Jet fans are still a little split on how to feel about Revis because of that. And that's always going to be in the back of their head. I'm curious because I've never asked a Bills fan this. And with Stephon Gilmore retiring last week, it's sort of topical. How do Bills fans feel about Gilly? He played on a bunch of teams beyond that, but specifically with that Patriot flavor, and everyone hates the Patriots. He won a Super Bowl there, but he also started his career, his bone, he cut his teeth as a Buffalo Bill. What's the complicated feelings there?
I think they've softened a little bit. I think even in the retirement video he put out last week, like there was a bunch of Bills stuff in it, and which was nice to see. The biggest thing, it wasn't even necessarily that he went to the Patriots. On his way out, I'm paraphrasing, but I think he signed with the Patriots, and he made some kind of comment along the lines of like, oh, it'll be nice to finally play on primetime. And he kind of made like some passive aggressive or maybe aggressive comments that everybody was like, oh, this dude can kick rocks. I do think, again, time heals all wounds type of deal. I also think it's understandable for a lot of fans. The Bills were not a good organization. They were in the midst of the drought. Things were going sideways. Like, you get it. Someone doesn't want to stay and be part of that. It was definitely painful to watch him go to the Patriots and then kind of evolve even more into like one of the best corners in the league, even though like he was good for the Bills, but I don't think people saw him nationally as like, oh, one of the best man-to-man corners and one of these great lockdown guys. And then he goes to the Patriots and it's just straight lockdown. And so, yeah, I think that was frustrating. But I think fans have softened on him a little bit. I don't think there's that palpable hate now like it was for him when he first left and kind of made some of those comments.
And just a quick follow on that, for people that don't hold him in that light, or I don't know how people perceive him, especially because, he bounced on, what was that, like 5 different teams in 5 years, the Patriot run, Panthers, Colts, Cowboys, Vikings. So maybe that will affect perhaps perception, but he's a former defensive player of the year, won a Super Bowl. 2-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. He had led the league in picks in one of those seasons, so he has a lot of credentials. Maybe it's a crazy question. Is he at all a Pro Football Hall of Fame conversation in the future?
Oh, I think anytime you're like a player of the year for an entire side of the ball, it kind of goes like you just enter that conversation to some degree. And yeah, I don't think he necessarily had like his Bills run wasn't extremely strong or notable, I think statistically, like necessarily. And then you talk about kind of how he winded down and how the back end went. But his years with the Patriots, I mean, obviously what defensive player of the year, he was a super key cog in that defense. And in part of that Super Bowl run, that Super Bowl win was the one against the Rams.
Correct. The 13-3 game. Yeah.
Yes. And granted, a huge problem with the Rams offense in that game was Todd Gurley's knee went away that season and their offense kind of fell apart along with Todd Gurley's knee. But essentially what the Patriots did in that game was just load the defensive line and say, you're not going to run against us. Good luck trying to beat the corners. And Gilmore just locked an entire side down by himself and erased everything. And he was a hugely important part to what they did in the Super Bowl. Granted, a lot of it happened because of what was going on with Gurley. You know, man, great Patriots luck there that like one of the best players in the game suddenly can't play anymore for them in time for the Super Bowl. Also, that Rams team shouldn't have been there because the Saints got screwed. Nick Roby in the interference, but
the 2019 NFC Championship call.
Unreal. Unreal. Still don't know how that's not interference. Conversation for another time. But I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
I'd have to really dive into like the stats and everything fully, but I don't think you got to have. I just think you would need a little more on the resume. But
I hadn't even thought about it. Honestly, and I'm a big nerd for the Hall of Fame. I haven't even like in my head given it much thought. And just when I was looking at his resume, like, is it a conversation? Is it interesting? So no, I just
say a conversation again. It takes a lot to be, especially as a corner. Like so much of the league, defensive player of the year is always tied to like sacks, and it's hard to get interceptions now. Like if you're a corner or you're a DB and you're winning defensive player of the year, I think that's a pretty big feather in your cap. And yeah, I mean, he had a decent stretch. Even his last season in Buffalo, he had 5 interceptions. Then he goes to the Pats. He was an All-Pro twice with the Patriots. Well, actually, 1, 2, 3, 5 Pro Bowl appearances. Although the Pro Bowl is a joke, especially now. But 5 Pro,
especially now, yeah,
especially now, 5 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pro first teams, and a Defensive Player of the Year. So that's actually that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Anthony, as I mentioned, the Bills only with 2 picks in the top 100, and they won't pick until pick 26. But the one advantage I think they could have is that 26 could be really interesting, especially if only one quarterback is off the board by the time we get to number 26, because we know there are some teams, including my colleagues' team, the Jets, that may be interested in the guy that everybody thinks is going to be the second quarterback taken off the board. And if you get that guy late in the first round instead of waiting till the second or even the third round to pick him, you're going to get that extra control, which the Giants did last year with Jackson Dart. And I think in the long run, this could turn out to be a very smart move. You get that extra year of control. You get that extra year of, the rookie contract kind of situation before you kind of, have to pay your quarterback the mega bucks, assuming they've turned into a franchise. So are you open for business? And do you like being in that spot? Is 26, even though it's late in the first round, maybe could it be a good spot for potential trade and to pick up some other assets?
I think it could be. Yeah. I'm just one team to mention, but maybe like if you're the Arizona Cardinals, it's like, okay, do we want to look at Ty Simpson and kind of move up for that? I think there's a lot of teams that could potentially be quarterback needy next year, depending on how this season shakes out. And I know the quarterback class is better next year, and particularly kind of headlined by the prodigal son, Arch Manning. But kind of seeing, you got Dante Moore. I think Lenora Sellers from South Carolina comes out next year, and you got some other guys still kind of kicking around. We'll see what the season brings, but I think there might be more quarterback needy teams than there are like first round quarterbacks next year. So if you are a team with some draft capital, why not trade back into the first round, get yourself a QB this year if it is like Ty Simpson, and give yourself some extra breathing room to kind of see what happens there. I am team trade back for the Bills. That is the pick. That is the selection I would like at 26. If it's like, oh, who do you want the Bills to take at 26? Right. I'm like, I want them to take their pick and trade it to someone else. Like, that's what I want. I want as many day 2 picks, or as many picks in the top 90, top 100 as possible. So I would love for them to trade back to the 30s, and I wouldn't have a problem if they traded back from the 30s into the 40s and tried to get themselves like 4 day 2 picks. I would welcome that. So I'd love for them to trade back. I think they are in a decent spot for that, for a team looking to move up, and because they're also a team themselves trying to acquire more capital. So yeah, I think they are decently in that spot, and I would hope they would try and trade back once, but if they can make it happen multiple times, easier said than done. I would be a big fan of that.
All right, Anthony. So you're probably going to hate this next question, but like I might as well throw it out there. You hate most of my questions, but that's neither here nor there. So at least I'll keep it consistent. Maybe it's going to go back to what you just said about free agency. You're like, they didn't make a lot of moves, but they didn't have the money. What about the Bills trading up and getting crazy there? Because basically, and this is a super oversimplification, but when you have Josh Allen every year, you're like, yeah, Super Bowl or bust. We need to win the championship every year. We need to maximize this window that he has. If there's a player, and I've heard Bills fans whispering about Jordan Tyson and that they think he's really talented, I think falling to 26 seems very hard to believe. But some sort of slippage, sure, I could totally see that. Do you make that aggressive move up? Or is it just, Paul, we just don't have the assets, and as much as that would be cool and crazy to do, we just don't have the picks to do that, so we won't pull that move? Or is that something Joe Brady has his stamp, and his stamp is say, hey, I'm going to go make a all-in, let's go move, because we got freaking Josh Allen, and we can figure out the rest?
It's funny. One of the things that I've talked about it for years is, part of the struggles with the Bills, like not reaching the promised land and not getting over the hump. There's been game planning things and coaching things, but a good chunk of it has been like the teams that they lose to. Yes, they get like out coached or out game planned, but the Bills just haven't had like the top tier players or the top tier firepower that a lot of these other teams have had. Like for years, it was like, okay, well, you got 2 A tier players. You got Allen and you got Diggs, and then Diggs is gone. And it's like, okay, you got Allen and what, like who else is like, I ask this a lot of times during the year when I'll have like people on the show who cover other teams on certain weeks when the Bills play. And it's like, okay, if you're playing the Bills, you're like, oh man, we got to deal with Josh Allen. And then my question is always like, who else do you do that with for the Bills? Where it's like, oh, we got to deal with fill in the blank. Like even as a Jets fan for you, like think about that. Like obviously you don't like the Bills, and I know your answer could be shaded, but when you play the Bills, even last year, right? Like as a team with Super Bowl aspirations, or even the year before, who's the name where you're like, oh,
James Cook?
Yeah. Okay. Fair for Cook. Yeah. Led the league in rushing last year. Really strong year. Good call out on that, because I feel like not a lot of people give him his flowers enough. I think when Von Miller first got there, he kind of fell into that conversation, but then he got hurt. They just haven't had the guys where it's like, especially like using the Chiefs as the example. Oh, Mahomes. Oh, Kelsey. Oh, Chris Jones. Oh, McDuffie. And then it's also like Andy Reid and Spags. Like you just haven't had that with the Bills. And I think the Bills have lacked top tier talent. I would love for them to get it. I don't think this is the draft to do that, because I don't think there's a lot of blue chip guys in the class, and they've got so many needs, short-term and long-term, that trading up in this draft for a blue chipper, I think is going to cost more than they can afford, literally and or figuratively. And specifically with Tyson, I'm super for me, Jordan Tyson is wide receiver 1, all things considered. I think he's the best receiver in this class. But if you're going to trade up for Jordan Tyson, then you're sacrificing more draft capital. And it's for a guy who, I don't know, does he play like 10 games a year? And if he's playing those 10, is he on a pitch count because he can't stay healthy? Is he pulling a hammy every other week? He's got ligament damage in his career, muscular stuff, bone stuff. He just can't seem to get out of his own way with his health. But are you confident your medical team can right the ship? I love
Super
him.
Mario Williams. Prospect. Oh, Mario Williams. That was a guy I used to have circled on the sheet. That's a handful of years ago.
Way back in the day. Yeah. And then Rex Ryan came and ruined that defense and took them from what they were and tried to put a square peg into a round hole. I like the idea of trading up. I don't think this is the class to do it. And I don't think Tyson is the player to do it for, because you're sacrificing more assets for a guy who might not play a bunch every year because he gets hurt. I think that's wonky and risky.
Anthony, last one for me here. So rumors out of New York / New Jersey on the Giants and Dexter Lawrence. So Dexter Lawrence has demanded or is asked for a trade. Okay. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's too important to where the Giants are at right now, and they don't want to create another hole in a defense that already has several holes, and they're trying to, plug up those gaps through both free agency and the draft. But let's just go under the premise for a minute that this gets out of control, that this gets to a place where, the Giants and Dexter just can't get on the same page. The Bills are intriguing to me because I'd take 26 off your hands if I had to. Maybe I'd take something from your draft next year. I don't have Sexy Dexy anymore. You get Sexy Dexy. All right. I get a pick where I can replace Sexy Dexy and get, 5 years of control of that guy late in the first round. And I get a future draft asset as well. And I've saved some money. I've taken some money off of my budget now, which gives me more maneuverability. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with Kayvon Thibodeau. So there's still some nice chess pieces here for the Giants to be moving around and either creating space or, getting players, hopefully equal or better players on the cheap. The Bills, you said, we talked earlier about their needs. Maybe their number one overall need might be interior defensive line. Guess what Dexter Lawrence plays? Interior defensive line. You got any interest? What are your thoughts? I mean, does Dexter Lawrence float your boat? Could the Bills afford him? Is it a team that is a viable trade entity here with the Giants, if indeed it came to that? Which, again, I start with the premise of I don't think it's going to come to that. But if it did, the Bills are certainly a team I would look at.
Yeah, apparently they reached out. I'm assuming every team reached out because Dexter Lawrence is one of the better players in football. You and I were talking offline earlier. I know he had a down year this past year. I don't know how much of it was the team and the organization and maybe motivation things, which still isn't an excuse. I think he's one of the better defensive players in all of football, not just at his position, just across the board on defense. I would give up pick 26 in an instant and not think twice about it. And then, I would throw something in for next year potentially too. If we're looking at, ideally I'd love to give like a day 3 pick next year or something like that. But and apparently the rumors, they're only looking for like a first round or a second round pick this year. I would do the first immediately for Dexter Lawrence. Put him at nose. You can do odd front looks with him. You can do even front stuff. The bigger thing is more of the contract, right? Like he wants a new deal, but I think that kind of helps you a little bit if you're the Bills because you can play the structuring game of it and layer it how you need to be able to kind of make it fit this year and potentially down the road. I would not think twice. I would trade for Dexter Lawrence immediately. He's a known commodity. He's a proven quantity. He's one of the better players in all of football, one of the best players at his position within that. And that position is a premium position. And now to kind of tie it into the previous question that when Paul and I were talking, now if you're playing the Bills, it's like, oh, we got to deal with Josh Allen. And we got to deal with Dexter Lawrence. Then all of a sudden your defensive line becomes kind of scary, kind of a problem. And I think Lawrence would be rejuvenated being on a team like the Bills with Super Bowl aspirations that are very realistic and a fan base that would kill for him.
And just to sprinkle in a nugget in there, that's what happened to Quinnen Williams. He was on the Jets. Things had not been going well for a long time since he was drafted back in 2019. He goes to the Cowboys, and Jet fans are like, this Quinnen Williams guy, what's going on here? He goes to Cowboys, and he looked like he was freaking Lawrence Taylor. Like, whoa, where the hell is this guy? So he was just like rejuvenated immediately, and there's a buzz, old face, new place, all that stuff. So there's some legitimacy to that sort of thing. And obviously in a Dexter Lawrence case, if this trade were to happen, this feels like an offseason thing, not a mid-season thing, which I think would benefit Sexy Dexy even more in terms of impact and being around the team and defensively, the schematics and all that jazz of how it would come out.
And you know what it could tie into too? It could be similar to like stuff like, ironically, granted, wasn't traded, but Stephon Gilmore, who we talked about earlier, who's with the Bills. You're just like, man, like I'm a good player, but this kind of sucks. And then he goes to the Patriots. He's like, oh, this is great. I'm going to do great here. And then does great. Like you could kind of see that with Lawrence, as rough as it is. So I would give 26 up in a heartbeat. Again, I want to trade back with 26 and get as much capital as I can, but screw that. If the option is trade back at 26 or trade 26 and get Dexter Lawrence, I'm trading 26 and getting Dexter Lawrence.
Okay, fair enough. Like I said, I don't know that it's going to happen, but I think they're a very viable, trade entity here for the Giants to take a look at it if indeed it came.
Maybe, Joe Shane studied under Brandon Beane, so maybe it's one friend helping out the other and they make a deal. And I'd love that even more. Maybe Shane is like, hey, man, listen, everything's terrible here. I'm on my way out. Do you want Dexter Lawrence for like a 7th round pick?
Hilarious.
Well, he'll have to run that by John Harbaugh.
I was saying by John Harbaugh, because he's not the one making decisions.
That happens. Unfortunately, as much as Shane says he's making decisions, let's face it,
he is not.
Yeah, it's being run up the flagpole in every particular instance. All right, Anthony, as always, appreciate it. Next time we talk to you, we'll be a week away from the NFL draft. Can't wait till that thing arrives. Until then, thanks, buddy.
Thank you for having me.